I want to start by saying I don't believe in ghosts. I'm a practical person. I pay my taxes on time. I separate my recycling. When something breaks, I look for the logical explanation before I look for anything else. But I've been having the same dream for 11 years. And 3 months ago, I walked into that dream with my eyes wide open. It always starts the same way. I'm standing on the porch of a house I don't recognize. 2 stories, old white paint peeling at the corners. Black shutters on every window. The kind of house that looks like it's been holding its breath for a very long time. A woman opens the door before I knock. She's maybe 60, silver-haired, wearing a dark green dress that seems slightly too formal for whatever occasion this is. She smiles at me, but the smile doesn't reach her eyes. It doesn't even try. She leads me through a dim hallway into a backyard where a group of people are already seated around a long table. I never recognize any of them. They're always different. Different faces, different ages, but they all share the same quality. They look at me like they've been expecting me, and they look away before I can hold eye contact. We sit, we eat, or we seem to eat. No one speaks. That's the part that gets me every time. The silence. Not comfortable silence, not the silence of people who know each other well enough not to need words. This is a silence that has weight, pressure, like being underwater. And then the woman at the head of the table sets down her fork, turns to me and says, always says, "Your room is ready. The one on the second floor at the end of the hall. Marcus will take you up." Marcus is always standing behind me when she says it. I never hear him approach. He's tall and pale, with dark eyes that seem slightly too far apart, and he never speaks. He just waits. And I follow him. Every single time I follow him. We go up the stairs. 16 steps, I've counted, and down a hallway lined with framed photographs I can never quite focus on. Marcus stops at the last door on the right. He opens it. He steps aside. I walk in. And that's where the dream ends. Not with a scream, not with a monster. It ends the moment I cross that threshold, like a film reel snapping in the projector. I wake up with my heart slamming in my chest and the absolute bone-deep certainty that something terrible was waiting for me in that room. I had this dream for the first time when I was 23. By the time I turned 30, I'd had it at least 200 times. I stopped mentioning it to people because of the way they'd look at me. That particular expression people wear when they're trying to decide if you're interesting or just unstable. I had my own theories about it. Childhood anxiety, control issues, some half-remembered house from a road trip when I was a kid. I even paid a therapist $200 an hour for 4 months to tell me that recurring dreams are usually about unresolved emotional patterns. That helped exactly nothing. But I want to be clear, for most of those 11 years, the dream was just a dream. Unpleasant, yes. Disorienting, sure. But it lived in sleep where it belonged, and my waking life was entirely normal. Until last October. My college friend Dana bought a house upstate and spent a summer renovating it. She'd been posting about it constantly. New floors, original crown molding, a clawfoot tub she'd found under a drop cloth in the master bath. The kind of house content that makes you genuinely happy for someone. She invited a group of us up for a long weekend in early October. 6 people, 2 cars, 3 hours north of the city. I said yes immediately. I needed to get out of my apartment. I'd been working too much, sleeping badly, and the dream had been coming almost every night for the past 3 weeks, which hadn't happened since my late 20s. The drive up was fine. Good music, good conversation. The roads got narrower and more wooded as we went, and the October light was doing that thing it does in the Northeast. Golden sideways like the sun is always in the middle of setting. And then we turned off the main road, came through a tree-lined driveway, and the house appeared at the end of it. White paint, black shutters, 2 stories. I told myself it was a coincidence. There are 10,000 houses that look like that in New England. I was primed to see it. I'd been dreaming about it constantly. My brain was pattern matching. Donna came out the front door to meet us, arms wide open, and I made myself smile and hug her and compliment the porch and carry my bag inside. The hallway was dim. There were framed photographs on the walls. I kept moving. The backyard was beautiful. She'd strung lights between two old oak trees, and there was a long table already set for dinner. The other guests were already out there, standing around with glasses of wine, and everything was warm and normal and fine. I had 2 glasses of wine quickly. That helped. Dinner was good. The conversation was good. Dana told us about the history of the place. Built in the 1890s, passed through several families, sat empty for almost a decade before she bought it from the estate of a woman named Margaret Hale, who lived there alone for 30 years. She died in the house, Dana said. Not dramatically, just as a fact. In her sleep, they said, in the upstairs bedroom. Which one? Someone asked. The one at the end of the hall. I set down my wine glass. I put you in there, actually, Dana said, looking at me across the table. It's the biggest guest room. I figured you'd want the space. The table kept talking. I heard exactly none of it. I went up to bed around 11, which I realized now was a decision made by someone in a mild state of denial. The room was nice. Dana had done beautiful work. Clean white walls, simple furniture, a wide window looking out over the dark yard. Normal, tasteful, fine. There was one thing. On the wall beside the bed, hung slightly too low the way older pictures sometimes are, was a portrait. Oil on canvas, maybe 18 by 24 inches. In a heavy dark frame, a woman. Silver-haired, maybe 60, wearing a dark green dress. She was seated, hands folded in her lap, looking directly at the painter. Directly, by extension, at me. Her expression was composed and pleasant, and absolutely entirely wrong. The way the mouth curved, it was technically a smile, but there was something underneath it. Something that the painter had either captured by accident or on purpose, and either possibility was unsettling. There was a small plaque on the bottom of the frame, tarnished brass. I leaned in close to read it. Margaret Hale, by her own hand, 1987. I stood there for a long time. Then I went back downstairs, found Dana in the kitchen, and asked her very casually if she knew anything about the portrait. "Oh, that's Margaret," she said. "The woman who owned the house. Apparently she was a painter. I found that in the room when I moved in. It was in the closet, actually, faced to the wall. I hung it up because it seemed sad to leave it hidden." "Did you know she painted it herself?" "Yeah, it says so on the frame." Dana looked at me more carefully. "You okay? You look pale." "Just tired," I said. "Long week." I went back upstairs. I stood in the doorway of the room for what felt like a long time, looking at the portrait. Margaret Hale looked back. She had been dead for, according to Dana's story, about 12 years. She had painted this image of herself, in this house, in this room, and then she had died here. And for some reason, for 11 years, she had been showing up in my dreams and telling me my room was ready. I took the portrait off the wall. I put it in the closet, face to the wall, exactly where Dana had found it. I got into bed. I left the lamp on. I told myself I was a grown adult, and this was a house in upstate New York, and there was nothing in this room except furniture and a painting that was now behind a closed closet door. I fell asleep. I don't know what woke me. The room was dark. I must have knocked the lamp off in my sleep because I'd left it on. I was lying on my side, facing the wall. There was someone standing at the foot of the bed. I knew without turning over. The same way you know sometimes in complete darkness that you're not alone. Some animal part of the brain that we don't have good language for. I could hear breathing, slow and patient and close. I turned over. The lamp was on the floor, but still lit, throwing uneven light across the ceiling. The closet door was open. The portrait was back on the wall. And the woman in the portrait, the painted woman, the woman whose face I had memorized from 1,000 dreams, was not in the same position she'd been in when I looked at it earlier. Her hands, which had been folded in her lap, were now resting flat on her knees. Her head was tilted slightly to one side, and her eyes, which in the portrait I'd examined closely enough to see were dark brown, were now looking at a spot on the bed directly behind where I was sitting. I heard something shift in the room, fabric moving, the creak of weight on floorboards. I left. I didn't pack. I didn't change out of what I was sleeping in. I went down the stairs and out the front door, and I sat in my car in the driveway until the sky went gray, and then I drove home. I texted Dana the next morning and told her I'd gotten an emergency work call. She was gracious about it. She didn't ask questions. I went back 2 weeks later, in the daytime with Dana present, to pick up the bag I'd left. We went up to the room together. The portrait was hanging on the wall, hands folded in its lap, eyes forward, the same way it looked in the photo Dana had sent me when she was decorating. "Did you move this at some point?" I asked her. "No," she said. "Why?" "No reason. I haven't had the dream since that night. I've thought about that a lot. 11 years of the same dream, and then it stops. Not gradually, not with some sense of resolution. Just stops completely the morning after I slept in that room." There are two ways to read that. The first is that whatever the dream was processing, whatever my brain was working through over all those years, finally resolved itself. Confronting the literal version of the thing I'd been dreaming about broke the cycle. Clean, psychological, rational. The second is that the dream stopped because it was never just a dream. It was an invitation, and I finally showed up. And whatever was waiting in that room got what it came for. I genuinely don't know which one I believe. Some nights I'm convinced it's the first. Some nights I lie awake and listen to my apartment and remind myself that I live alone and every sound is accounted for. Some nights I'm less sure. Thanks for listening. If you've had a recurring dream that you think is more than a dream, leave it in the comments. I read everything. Marcus had been driving for 6 hours when the headache started. Not the kind you get from bad coffee or a long shift. This was something else. A dull, rhythmic pressure at the base of his skull, like something pressing outward from the inside. He'd written it off as fatigue. He was good at writing things off. That was the job. He pulled the silver hatchback into a truck stop somewhere off Route 221, deep in the Appalachian dark. The moment he stepped out of the car, the headache eased. Not gone, just quieter. He stood there longer than he needed to, breathing in the pine-soaked night air, watching moths orbit the yellow lights above the pumps. He didn't want to get back in the car. He told himself it was the long drive, told himself it was the 2 energy drinks and a gas station sandwich sitting wrong in his gut. But Marcus had been lying to himself for years, and he was getting tired of how easy it was. He pulled out his phone. 1 bar, then none. There was a payphone bolted to the cinder block wall of the closed diner beside the station. Half the plastic casing was cracked off, the handset hanging by a metal cord. Marcus fed it a quarter out of habit, half expecting nothing. The dial tone came through clean. He called Harlan. Harlan Voss picked up on the second ring, which meant he'd been awake, which meant he'd been waiting. "You're early," Harlan said. His voice was low and smooth, the kind of voice that belonged behind a desk or in a confessional. I stopped. Marcus kept his voice flat. "Something feels wrong about this run." A pause, carefully measured. Define wrong. "The guy who handed me the car, Decker. I've met skittish people before. This was different. He looked like he was relieved to be getting rid of it. Not the car, whatever's in the back. You haven't opened it." It wasn't a question. "No, but Harlan, I've been doing this for 8 years. I've moved things I didn't ask about. Medical equipment, electronics. Once you had me drive a refrigerated van 14 hours with no explanation, and I didn't say a word. This is different." "Different how, Marcus?" He tried to find the right word. "It feels like something that's been left too long." Another pause, this one longer. "You're being well compensated for this particular run. The client is specific about the handling. Sealed, untampered, delivered by dawn. That's all this is. Decker is reliable. Odd, yes. Reliable? Yes. You're tired, and you're in the middle of nowhere at 3 in the morning. Yeah. Finish the drive. Call me when it's done. Don't open the trunk. Marcus stood there a moment after Harlan hung up, handset still pressed to his ear, listening to the static. Then he walked back to the car. The headache came back the moment he touched the door handle. He gritted his teeth and pulled onto the 2-lane highway heading south. The Appalachian dark was total out here. No streetlights, no houses, just the pale cone of his headlights cutting through trees that pressed in from both sides like they were leaning in to listen. He cranked the radio. Classic rock, then static, then nothing. The signal died somewhere around mile marker 40. He drove in silence. The forest had a rhythm to it. The white reflectors on the center line ticked past like a metronome. The trees blurred into a single, unbroken wall. His eyelids grew heavy in the slow, stupid way they do when your body decides it's done arguing with you. He shook himself awake twice, pinched the inside of his wrist, turned the AC up until his fingers went numb. Then he heard it. A knock. From the trunk. Marcus told himself it was road vibration, a loose spare tire, something that had shifted when he took the last curve too fast. He told himself that for about 3 minutes. Then it came again. Deliberate, evenly spaced. 1, 2, 3. A pause. 1, 2, 3. He pulled over so hard the tires caught the gravel's shoulder and sprayed rock against the undercarriage. He sat there with both hands on the wheel and the engine running, listening to the forest breathe around him. Silence. He knew he shouldn't open the trunk. Harlan had been clear. The client had been clear. Every instinct he had as a professional told him to pull back under the road and drive until the sun came up and never think about this night again. He got out of the car. The smell reached him before he got the trunk halfway up. Sweet and wrong, like fruit left in standing water. Like something that used to be alive and had spent a long time becoming something else. He gagged, stepped back, breathed through his mouth. Inside, wrapped in a black plastic sheet and then again in a gray wool blanket, was a shape, a large one, man-sized. His hands moved before he made the decision to move them. He unwrapped the outer layer, then the inner one. It was a body. Male, older. Whatever had happened to him, it hadn't been quick and it hadn't been gentle. But what stopped Marcus, what locked his legs and emptied his head, was the device around the man's neck. A collar. Black nylon, military-grade hardware. Except it wasn't military anything Marcus had ever seen. Thin copper traces ran across it in looping patterns, meeting at a small rectangular module near the throat. A status light on the module pulsed green. Slow, regular, like a heartbeat. Marcus stared at it for a long time. Then he closed the trunk, walked to the tree line, and threw up. He drove. He didn't know what else to do, so he drove. Faster now, taking the curves on muscle memory alone, willing the miles to disappear. The destination was 3 hours south. He just had to stay on the road, stay awake, stay calm. He was doing okay. Then the road changed. He noticed it gradually, the way you notice that a song has been over for a while, but you only just registered the silence. The trees were gone. The 2-lane had become 4 lanes, smooth and freshly paved, without a seam or a crack anywhere in the asphalt. There were no signs, no mile markers, no exits. The clock on the dash said he'd lost 11 minutes. He was nowhere he recognized, and Marcus knew every road within a 100-mile radius, had driven most of them in the dark. He pressed on. What else do you do? A sign materialized in his headlights. Orange, construction-grade plastic. Road work ahead, prepare to merge. Orange cones appeared, pushing him right. Then more cones, then more, until all 4 lanes were blocked, sealed off by a neat diagonal line of orange plastic. Marcus slowed, stared at them, and then drove through them. They spun away under his tires and bounced, red in his brake lights. Beyond the cones, the road markings disappeared. No lines, no reflectors. Just a flat, featureless plain of black asphalt running out to the edge of his headlights and then into nothing. Marcus stopped the car. He sat there for a full minute. Then he got out and walked. He couldn't explain why walking felt like the right call. Maybe because every time he stepped away from the car, the headache eased. Maybe he just needed to be out of that vehicle, away from whatever was in the trunk, away from the green pulse of that light in the dark. He walked. The air was cool and clean. The sky above was overcast. No stars, no moon. The asphalt beneath his feet stretched out in every direction, completely flat, completely featureless. He walked until he couldn't see the car behind him anymore, and then kept walking. He thought about practical things, whether Harlan would still use him after this, whether he could find work in another state, whether any of what he'd seen in the trunk was actually what he thought it was. He was mid-thought when he saw the light ahead. He ran toward it without deciding to run. It was a car, a silver hatchback, engine running, driver's door hanging open, his phone visible on the passenger seat, screen lit up with a missed call from Harlan. He'd walked in a complete circle, except he hadn't turned once. He grabbed the phone. Harlan answered immediately. "Marcus." Something was off. The voice was Harlan's, but the smoothness was gone. He sounded like a man reading from a script he didn't write. "Harlan, I need you to tell me what's in the trunk." "Is the collar still on?" Marcus went cold. "What?" "The collar on the package. Is it still secured?" Yes. Yeah, the light was green." A long exhale. "Good. That's the only thing that matters right now. As long as the collar is locked and the light is green, it's contained. Do not remove it. Do not touch it. Do not open the trunk again." "What is it, Harlan?" No answer. "What is in my trunk?" "Finish the delivery." The call dropped. Marcus stood behind the open trunk for the second time that night. He didn't remember walking back there. He was just there, key in hand, trunk already rising. The blankets were torn, shredded from the inside. The body was different. Whatever had been healing, and something had definitely been healing, had finished. The wounds were gone. The skin was smooth. The frame had shifted, redistributed somehow. Limbs at proportions that didn't work, that bent wrong, that suggested an underlying architecture that had nothing to do with a human skeleton. Two eyes caught his flashlight, one filmed and cloudy, one sharp and lit from somewhere inside. Both of them focused on him. The collar was still there. The green light still pulsed. Then it blinked red. Marcus ran. He made it about 15 feet before his legs stopped working. Not from fear, they just stopped. He dropped to the asphalt and lay there, looking up at the overcast sky, his body still and calm while everything in his mind was screaming. He heard it get out of the trunk, heard the asphalt flex under weight distributed wrong across too many points. He heard it breathe. It stood over him. He couldn't turn his head to look directly at it, but he could see it in his peripheral. Tall, pale, still wearing the shreds of the dead man's clothing, but shaped now into something that had never been a man. It crouched down beside him. The headache returned, sharper than anything he'd felt before, a white spike behind his eyes. And then through it, he heard something he would spend the rest of his life trying to unhear. It wasn't a voice exactly, more like the idea of a voice, arriving in his head without using his ears at all. "You removed the collar for 4 minutes back there in the woods." Marcus couldn't remember doing that, but somewhere under the panic he knew it was true. 4 minutes was enough. "Thank you for the ride." When the highway patrol found the silver hatchback at 6:14 a.m., it was parked neatly on the shoulder of Route 221, engine off, keys in the ignition. The driver's side door was open. The trunk was empty. Marcus Hale was found 3 days later, 12 miles north through terrain that had no roads and no trails. He was alive. He was unharmed. He had no memory of the 3 days. He also couldn't explain what he kept writing on the walls of his hospital room in the nights that followed. The same circuit board pattern over and over in whatever he could find. The doctors said it was a stress response. None of them could explain the light green glow under his fingernails. still pulsing. If this story unsettled you, that was the point. Sleep well. And if you ever get a job offer from someone with a smooth voice who pays too well and asks too little, maybe pass on it.